you have a problem at work, you're very likely, especially if you integrate the two so tightly, that you bring that problem back home.
All right, so welcome to a new episode of the Human Error Podcast. My name is Ferry, and today I am joined by Clara. Clara, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you be so kind and give us a quick introduction of who you are?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, my name is Clara. I'm coming from a psychology background. So did my bachelor in psychology, organizational psychology, and then specialized in organizational dynamics, focusing on digitalization. And then on a more practical side, I've been working in the data department of a civil construction company, focusing on data maturity. And I'm now working in a healthcare device company, focusing on talent intelligence and digital transformations. So yeah, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. That's quite a resume that you just gave us. Can you elaborate on what exactly it is you're doing right now? Because just to give a little bit of a background, we met each other through a project that you did for the Erasmus University for your studies. Which is how you got introduced to, brand humanizing, the synergy between humans and technology. What is it that you're focusing on right now? Like, what is your main topic?
So my main topic, especially when we're looking at my university career currently, is probably my thesis, where I'm looking into how organizational structures can change innovation. So you're especially seeing that when you, for example, see startup companies that have developed because they came up with this great technology, and then they're being bought over by large structured companies. And all of a sudden, basically, this autonomy and entrepreneurial spirit that they had completely disappears and is replaced by a corporate bureaucracy, and basically kills all technological innovation. So that's one of the big things that I'm looking into right now. And the other one is still the courses that are going on at uni, which is focusing especially on the impact that information communication technology has in our daily work life.
Okay, that sounds good. Those are some familiar topics. It's funny what you said about the space of an organization changing when innovation comes into play, right? You lose the kind of startup mentality, you go into like a corporate mind state. Do you think that also works for humans? Like if we talk about innovation, we talk about technological innovation, right? But can you also change on the other spectrum? Because I have something in mind, but I just want to see if we can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely think the main change is happening on the human side. Mainly because when you come from a startup, everything goes so quickly. You have an idea, you bring it to someone, and it's implemented within, I don't know, a day, depending on how small the startup is. But as soon as you move into a corporate structure, you have to go through several instances just to get your idea approved before you even start implementing it. And that can become super demotivating for employees, which is why you often see that once a company reaches a certain size, they start to stagnate because just the processing is far too slow, and it just kills innovation on the human side. So yeah, definitely you have a point.
Exactly, because the thing I'm thinking of is that's a book I read. It's my personal Bible, I would say, because I've read it like 5 times, and I strongly believe everything it says. It's called Delivering Happiness, by the former late CEO of Zappos. They've been, I think, purchased by Amazon, but they started out as this like super service-driven startup. And of course, they used technology, but they were so human-focused. And they had this fear of, if we are growing or if we are getting purchased, then we're probably going to lose the whole startup mentality, right? We're going to go into like an organizational structure with super often meetings, many managers. So what they did was they kind of like made that whole human part their core business. and said, whatever happens, however big we grow, this service level and this like personability needs to stay the same. The CEO sits at the desks with like everyone else, just on the same open plan. There's no offices for the vice presidents. There's only like this open office plan. So they kind of held on to that startup mentality, just by innovating on the human side, which was super interesting. So I think if we talk about the fear of innovation changing the corporate structure, or changing into a corporate structure, I think there's also like an upside if you focus on like the human side, but that hardly ever happens.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So there's even this new basically methodology coming up on how you should not integrate startups. And it's called acquisition at an arm's length. So basically, you do report to the company that bought you, but you're staying your own entity, and you're only getting support if you need it. But apart from that, you're basically left alone to do your thing, which I think is a really promising idea when you look at startups and acquisitions.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did at Zappos, because when they were purchased, they said, okay, we are fine by being a part of your organization. Amazon was huge already by then. I think it's in the late 90s, maybe 2000s. But they said, we are going to stay ahead of this organization. We will maintain it as like an own identity. Sure, it's fine. We'll be using your resources. We'll be using your people, but we are going to stay this organization with this service level, with these people, etc. That hardly ever happens. But I think that's a good change.
Yeah, it's unfortunately happening too little, in my opinion. There could be more, because it's still oftentimes the mindset that we give you our resources, you need to be part of us. But that can also cause a lot of anxiety within the individuals, because you also need to define a new vision for the company that you're buying. You need to define a new mission. So basically, just imagine you're a startup, you're being bought, and then you have to still acquire new talent, right, to keep going. And then to sell your company to the new employee, and they ask you, okay, so where do you see this company going in the next 5 years? Yeah, I don't know. So what's the strategy for this company? I don't know. And what is the general mission you want to achieve? I don't know. So yeah, with this whole integration and full integration, it's difficult.
It is, yeah. I do recognize what you're saying. And is this also something that you saw in your studies when you were doing the project with us?
Well, not directly, but what we did see is that there oftentimes is a lot of uncertainty around technology. So the pure idea of let's technologically and digitally innovate, it oftentimes comes just as a big question mark. So you're like, okay, let's do it, but what resources do we need? What exactly is our strategy? So you can define basically if an organization has the organizational readiness to innovate, which was exactly what we were researching with you guys.
Yeah, because can you tell us a little bit more about what you were researching?
Yeah, sure.
Because it was super interesting.
Yeah, no worries. You basically approached us with a super broad question, just saying, hey, technology is changing really fast and it's difficult to keep up with all of the developments happening. So please provide us with some methods and strategies to keep up. Super huge question, basically. And we quickly noticed, like, it's literally impossible to find a strategy to keep up with all of technology, especially because it's so dispersed depending on industry, depending on the individual organization, what sort of processes they're using. So we quickly focused it on, okay, what do you actually need to engage in this digital transformation, or to even develop it further into digital innovation? So we looked at the whole concept of organizational readiness for specifically AI, but then basically broadened this concept into organizational readiness for digital innovation in general. So basically the things that we looked at specifically were what preconditions are needed. And then the other thing that we focused on is there any difference when we look into public and private organizations? So private organizations being just general companies, monetized monetized companies, and public organizations being government bodies, for example. And we did find quite a difference and interesting preconditions, so to say. So what we found first is there needs to be the sort of organizational culture that would even facilitate innovation. And for that, you need, for example, openness within the culture, but you also need to have a positive outlook on how tech advancements can benefit your personal work style. And that's like really easily said, but organizational culture is one of the hardest things to change within the company. So you really need to check, like, is our organization currently set up for this, or do we have to put in a lot of work before we can think that far? Then the next thing that we noticed is you need to have a proper strategy. So it doesn't work to just say, we want to stay up to date, let's innovate. That's not going to work. So basically, it needs to be on every strategic agenda to just to stay up with competition, but you need to have a vision for yourself of why you want to do it. And here, it was really interesting to look into the difference between private and public organizations. So for the private ones, it was very much focused on, yeah, we want to stay competitive, we want to keep our profits high, and we want to win over projects by saying we have bigger capabilities than our competitors. However, on the public space, it was very much based on election votes. So it was very much what makes us the most popular. If we focus on digital innovation right now, we'll do it. But if there's different priorities for the civil for the general population, we won't. And that was a bit scary to think public organizations are focusing really on what makes them the most popular instead of what is the strategically most smart thing to do. But so these were the first two findings that we had. We had a couple more coming to the necessary resources, coming to what knowledge needs to be there. And also what I found really important was the partnerships. Because basically every organization said, yeah, we do our innovation in a partner system. We can't come up with all ideas ourselves and have all knowledge in-house. So it's really important to partner up with other companies that might have different expertises that we can leverage and they can leverage ours. So yeah, we sort of came up with this measuring tool with you guys.
Yeah, we got that, and we really enjoyed that one. I'm kind of curious still, is that only on the commercial side that they do the partnerships and look at how they can really make an impact?
No, that was in both. So especially the public organizations said they're working a lot with universities. Obviously, they're trying to basically grab all of the talent they can get because private organizations can just offer a lot more than a public one. So they're really trying to leverage the project-based work they can do with universities, just like you guys did.
Indeed. But is there a difference? And I'm just going to go back to one of the first things you said, the difference between like public and private. Public organizations base their innovation ideas on popularity. On votes. They're in the office for a year, so they don't really care about everything that happens 5 years plus. On the commercial side, they are working with their own budgets and working with competitors and stakeholders. Then what drives a commercial organization if it's not for popularity? What is their main driver to go into that innovation mindset?
So what we found was really that they wanted to expand their capabilities, especially when you look at companies that work on a project basis. So usually how it works, you have a tender coming in, a project that needs to be or is open for grabs, and then whoever can offer the best solution usually gets the project. So they're saying to stay afloat and stay profitable, they need to win these projects, which means they need to be better than their competition. But what we found is that there's a curve, so to say, on when and why people are implementing technologies. So you have the innovators, the one that sprint at the front, and they're really the risk takers, just trying out everything and anything. But most often, in the private sector at least, what they do is they go with the early or late majority. So basically, they see this has worked for a different company, it might work for us too. So now we'll implement it because we've already seen some success stories. One very popular example for that is blockchain. Like in theory, it's an amazing technology, but if you try to implement it, it often doesn't work because at some sort of the chain, there's just a lag. So it's a nice idea in theory, but when you put it into practice, there's very little success stories to be seen, which makes it not as popular to implement with private organizations.
But is that because the technology is still so young, or is there a different problem?
Well, for blockchain specifically, it's let's take the example of Tony's Chocolonis. They were like, okay, we're a slave-free company, and we want to make this sure by implementing blockchain. So what they then did is they gave this technology to the farmers in I don't know, wherever they were sourcing their cacao from. But what they quickly noticed, it's impossible to just give farmers that were trained in farming this high-tech technology and say, deal with it. Like, obviously that didn't work. And that was already the first step where the blockchain broke apart, because the information input was just not as accurate as it was supposed to be. And yeah, that's just one of the causes why blockchain in this particular example failed. But this is basically how it then went for other companies too, which in the end resulted in very little success stories.
And what triggers you to go into the technology? Because the way you talk about it, you're so passionate. What makes that passion for technology?
Oh, I think my individual passion just comes from all the opportunities that it has. Circling back to blockchain, it's a great opportunity, but it's just not implemented correctly in the social system that already exists. And that's something you really need to take into consideration. So at university, we call it so prettily the socio-technical system, which basically means you can never look at technology without also focusing on the social part of it. And that's just something that I see in organizations in general is lacking. They're like, here's the technology, we're implementing it. But to have the change management is maybe the first step, but you need to, for this change management to be properly effective, you need to take the existing social system into consideration too. And that's just not there yet. So that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I hope that we can sort of drive this awareness a little bit more.
And was there like a big shocker to you when you were doing the research? Was there something that you stumbled upon and thought, wow, this is very good or very bad?
I guess what was really good is that all of the organizations that we talked with were saying, okay, we know this is coming up more quickly than we expected, because obviously technology grows exponentially. So that was a good thing, I guess. But what was kind of shocking was that they didn't think above that or beyond that, so to say. It was like, we need to implement it. We're going to go through this technical innovation phase and transformation. But then really quickly, they were like, okay, so what sort of knowledge do we actually need? What sort of knowledge do we have in-house? Do we need to upskill? Do we need to hire? Like, that was a lot of uncertainty. And I think that was, for me, the most shocking thing. Like, okay, you have this idea, but there's no strategy. And I think that's what you can observe in many companies. Like, it's not just an individual case.
No, that's true. And I think that it has multiple reasons why it's the case. I think, first of all, technology is overestimated in many cases. Human skills are underestimated. And I think, and that's kind of what I was going for, and it's something that I heard this afternoon as well. Someone said some technologies like blockchain or chatbots, they are a hype. So they just jump on
Yeah.
the hype train. My biggest competitor is having a chatbot. I need a chatbot. My competitors are on the blockchain. I need to be on the blockchain. They kind of forget that it's a solution, right? Technology is just a tool. If my competitor is driving nails into his wall with a hammer, it doesn't mean that I need to do the same thing. If he starts using a saw to drive that nail, it doesn't mean that I'm going to use the same thing, because ultimately everything is a tool. And one of the things that we see, and that's where that organization was kind of shocked as well, is that they got suggestions to start using certain forms of technology. But the argument was, well, because everyone is using this type of technology, right? Forgetting that it's potentially a solution to a problem. So why would you implement the solution without knowing what the problem is? And secondly, they indeed, like you said, they don't look into the future. They don't look at what does this mean for like everything that's behind this part of technology. How does it influence the context that I have, the customer service that I'm providing, the manufacturing of my product, you name it. So they jump on the hype train of, okay, everyone's using this, we need it, because they feel that it gives them a competitive advantage or something. And then all of a sudden the processes don't work anymore. People are unhappy, clients are unhappy, because they're implementing solutions to non-existing problems. I think that to me that was the biggest shock, which was kind of confirmed by the research that you were doing, which made it even more scary to know that organizations are just implementing just because they think they need to do that.
Yeah, it's actually a psychological concept. It's called the bandwagon effect. It's basically everyone's doing it, so I want to do it too. So you definitely have a point there.
So that's a psychological thing.
Yeah, it is. It's a general thing. So basically just similar to peer pressure, so to say, but more on an organizational level. So basically it's just, everyone is doing this sort of thing. So I need to do this sort of thing now. It started with, or like a super popular example was with the Black Lives Matters phase. So like one organization started saying like, okay, we see all those protests going on. We agree with this. And all of a sudden, every company was like, yeah, me too, by the way. So it just takes the originality out of it. And with that also lowers the impact that you can have.
It does. I think the same is happening right now with Ukraine, right? Everyone stands with Ukraine, but it's just an image on their social media. It's not really making an actual impact. But they just copy one another. It's often also the same type of visuals, the same type of text. So there's no real empathy behind it, right?
Yeah.
It's just
absolutely, especially when you look deeper into it. I was recently in touch with a family from Ukraine that was IT specialists, and they were saying, okay, we're now in the Netherlands, and we would love to contribute to the workforce, the Dutch workforce, basically. We're highly skilled, so let us help. And reached out to all of these companies that were saying, we support Ukraine. But when you look into it, they're saying, oh no, we can't put in a specific focus on helping Ukrainian people, because that would be discrimination against all of the other companies, all of the other individuals from other countries.
Okay.
And that's just one example where I'm like, yeah, it's just an image.
Yeah, so just because they can't help one means they're not going to help anyone, or?
No, basically they're saying we can't can't prioritize Ukrainian individuals for getting jobs over other ones, even though they're in this tough situation right now. But if we would do that, it would be a discrimination against everyone that's not Ukrainian. But then again, I find it kind of wrong because it's taking the whole context away from the situation. Circling back to technology, that's exactly what's happening with technology too. Like we want this despite the context and not checking the context.
Yeah, because we want it because it's hype, right? Because everyone wants it. Yeah,
exactly.
I think, but on the Ukraine subject, on them working, because I think we're also both on the how does the workforce work and where are we going with that? I saw a post today. I think in the Netherlands they have 900 Ukrainian people who are actively working right now, or at least doing some voluntary work, or keeping busy. And the fun fact is indeed that the organizations that were the first one to talk about the Ukrainian crisis, we feel so sorry for everyone. They are the last ones to actually physically start doing something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because it's like you said, it's all mouth and it's no actions, right? But the thing is that there's small organizations with limited budgets. They actually hire them or at least help them out. And the thing is that I saw the comments underneath those news items that people were so surprised that we were offering them jobs because they were already getting like a sort of like a social security check, to get food and to get shelter, etc. So why would they also work? Shouldn't we provide other people with work? Kind of feels like you can never do the right thing as an organization, right?
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. But sorry, what was your question now?
Well, that wasn't really a question, but I just thought it was interesting to see how organizations, when they start offering their assistance to an actual cause, providing an actual solution, then people are still going to bash them for it for some reason. I just thought it was interesting because you touched up on that subject. But talking about like humans and psychology, because I was intrigued when the university talked to us about, the group project that you were doing with your team, that most of you had like a social background, like psychology, I think business administration, and a couple more. So I was kind of intrigued, like this is exactly what I personally feel strong about. Like where are we going as human beings? Obviously, this podcast being the human era, Jonathan and myself, we feel strongly that, the humans will prevail at some point. But where do you see everything going? Because now you've done research, you've done multiple parts of research. Now you looked at the intersection of humans and technology, about innovations, how a corporate culture is changed. But where do you see humans going in the next 5, 10, 15 years? I can see you nod because you've got an idea about this, right?
Obviously. I'm glad you finally brought it up. No, I see two main roads of development. So one being in the knowledge area, so looking at office jobs, how office jobs are changing. And I would say the impact that information communication technology has there is immense. It's changing everything. The other big road that I see is in manufacturing. I mean, we call it the next industrial revolution for a reason. Just as an example for the manufacturing side for now, one way where I can see technology be leveraged immensely is when it comes to remote expertise. So you, for example, don't even need to have an expert on site anymore. What you can do now, there's headsets with little built-in computers, where through basically this microcomputer, you can see exactly where what part goes and be guided by an expert that's maybe sitting on the other side of the world. And this example is already bringing us to the impact that I see is also happening with information communication technology in the white collar area, is you have this complete disperseness of workforce. So some people are sitting in Europe, some people are sitting in China, some in India. And basically, when we look at information technology, there's 3 specific needs that we need to fulfill when looking at how we're satisfied at work. And basically, that's the need for connectivity, the need for productivity, and the need for autonomy. It's called the self-determination theory, basically. And I can see that ICT, for example, has a positive as well as a negative impact on each of these needs. Do you agree with that?
Wow, that's a good question. Are we going into like a Maslow kind of like pyramid or?
No, I wouldn't call it a Maslow one. It's more like we have those 3 basic needs. It's independent of Maslow. But just to give you a more concrete example, so for connectivity, for example, obviously now that everything is digitally, and I mean, you and me, we're sitting in different cities and we can still chat. So connectivity becomes a lot more accessible and a lot easier. So basically, this need should be properly satisfied, right? But on the other hand, it can be over and under satisfied due to information technology or communication technology. in the sense that when I'm working, for example, I want to chat with someone and have a proper conversation, but I'm constantly getting pinged about other topics that are going on the side, new tasks coming in, that I'm having trouble to properly focus on the conversation that's happening in front of me. So in that sort of sense, it's oversatisfied, as I'm getting too much input at social input at the same time. But on the other hand, having these online discussions or online meetings, these are obviously focused more on tasks. So it's very difficult to form a proper trust-based relationship online. So even though you do have this connectivity, it's very transactional. And so you might have the connectivity, but you don't have the connection, so to say. So that's how I see that ICT has a positive and negative impact on all of the three needs that we have. There's obviously two more. I can dive a little bit more deep into them too, but I would first love to hear your side of, or how you view the connectivity issue due to communication technology.
I think that this issue became even more clear through the pandemic that we had. Speaking from personal experience, because I haven't researched this like thoroughly as you have, but speaking especially from experience, is that I am someone who likes a personal conversation in the flesh, because I want to see someone's body language as well. So in the first part of the pandemic, I kind of saw that there was barely any contact. Organizations weren't working, so meetings were on low. So then we were craving a conversation with someone else rather than your flatmate or your wife or whatever, because you get into the same kind of stories and you don't get any new information, etc. So I saw that like the online meetings like we're doing right now was a good step, because I could kind of look into your eyes and I could kind of like see and some sort of an emotion and movement, and then once we got used to that whole thing, I saw that the actual physical being with someone in like the same room is crucial to humans for at least for survival. So I think in that sense, like communication technology that we have really helped us to get through that pandemic, to get some sort of a social vibe back, and get to the meetings. But on the other hand, it starts working against us in my sense, because like we're doing right now, we're having a conversation, but it's not as connected as we would be if we were in the same room. But the convenience is so high that we kind of keep using this. So we're tearing away from actual conversations and actual connectivity, even though we are connected and we do have the feeling that we are talking to so many people on the daily, because we have 8, 9, 10 meetings a day digitally, but we're not really connecting with anyone. We're just talking to them. So that's my take on this, and I think that the pandemic really brought this to light. Obviously, speeding up the whole innovation of Zoom and Teams and etc. Maybe even speeding up the metaverse, which I also have two opinions about. But yeah, I think the connectivity issue is huge, and I think that we need to be wary of not forgetting what actual connectivity means between humans. The fact that we're talking to each other on an online platform is different than us connecting to each other and then having a conversation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it can help us, but we should see it again. We should see it as a tool. We're having this conversation right now, and we opted before this talk that the next conversation will be live in the same room, to make sure that we have, we use this as a tool to get connected tonight, but we need to not lose sight of what it means to actually be connected. That's my 2 cents on the connectivity part.
No, I really like it. You basically gave a nice real life example of the point that I was trying to make with theory. So that's really good. Now, the other two needs that I mentioned, basically, that make us satisfied at work, is productivity and autonomy. And especially when we look at the productivity side, now with the internet, for example, like I sound...
brand new,
but anyhow, we basically have all of our information constantly available. So one would expect, especially when it comes to process automation, one would expect that our productivity is exponentially increasing. And that's exactly what is expected from workers, which can cause immense stress. But on the other hand, not only do you have this pressure on yourself to actually be productive, this information overload can cause information fatigue. So at some point, you read and the words are just coming out here and going out there again. Nothing is sticking because it's just an overflow, so to say. So that's where I again see the bright and the dark side of information communication technology on this next need of productivity, where on the one hand side, yes, you do have everything available, everything becomes so much easier, but with that also comes a lot of pressure and overload, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I do. I also have a vision on that because I do like this topic a lot, and I'm glad you brought it up. I've always had trouble with, I think, the term productivity. I think a machine is built to be productive. And I think humans are not built to be productive. We can be productive, but not on set times and not for set durations. I a couple of years ago, I did a rant on my old 9 to 5, who said you need to come in at 9, you need to be creative between 9 and 11, you need to eat between 12 and 1. That's because that's super productive, because then you get back and you can work and you have all this information. But I think that having information, doing work, and being productive are 3 different things. I think one can be productive without producing something. And that's something I struggled with. I had the feeling, and that is because of my corporate background, once I'm not behind my laptop, I'm not productive. Because that was the stigma that we had, right? You're not at your desk, so you're not working. But I think that being productive also means sometimes going away from all that information, just to absorb the information. If you continuously, like you said, read stuff, you're not gonna absorb the information. You're just gonna see it, right? Or when you talk to someone, you hear that they're talking, but the words just don't reach your brain. So I think that, and I think this is the fundament of what I believe on productivity is, if we want to be really productive, we need to move away from the structure that we have, the 9 to 5 structure. If we have all this information and all this technology, we can reach it 24/7. Why don't we start looking at when individuals are at their peak performance? Not to speak on someone else, but I know Jonathan, the co-founder and one of my best friends, his most productive hours can be late at night. Because that's when he personally is at peak production, because he's creative, he has rest, there's no one around him, so he can truly focus on his work. He can get the information he needs, and then he can log off again to absorb what he has been doing. For me, it's early in the morning. For some reason, I used to be a night owl, but now I'm a morning person. Don't ask me how that started. But in the morning, I'm super productive. But only because I want to be. So I look for the information that I need, I do the work that I want, but I need to also step away from it at some point to make sure that I don't have that overload. The problem that I had working that 9 to 5, which always turned out to be an 8 to 7 kind of thing, is that I was always on. Because they had the feeling that if I was there, I was being productive, but I wasn't. There was so much information. People wanted meetings. People were calling. People were sending emails. So I got so much stuff that I was doing a lot of stuff, but I wasn't being productive. So I think that if we want to be productive in the future, no, let me rephrase. If we want to have productivity in the future, we need to optimize technology to be super productive. So we can be more creative. We can produce in the times that we feel that we are capable of producing. So that's my vision on like productivity. It's such a difficult topic, but yeah, humans and productivity, I don't see the combination.
Yeah, I really like what you basically just said. And I think there's 2 things that I'd like to add. So one being, you said it's really important to step away. Absolutely agree. So even in organizational psychology, we look at this in basically two balancing factors, one being demands and one being resources. And if you have too many demands, it leads to exhaustion. If you have resources, it leads to engagement. And that's exactly what you said. So basically, when we have all this work time that is imposed on us, that's a demand. That our resource of stepping away and switching off, that's the resource balancing out the demands, and that's what's causing engagement. If you are able to conserve resources, so to say. So really on point there. Even though you basically say that you are not the organizational psychology expert, maybe you are. You just don't know it yet. The other bit that I saw super clearly in what you said is the aspect of autonomy, which, circling back to the three basic needs that we have, it's the third need that makes us happy at work. And here I again see how you basically said we need to basically create technology in a way that enables us to be autonomous. But what I'm observing right now again, ICT has a bright side and a dark side when it comes to this. On the dark side is we can maybe try and schedule our work wherever we want, whenever we want, because laptops are portable, right? So it should give us more autonomy. But on the other hand, even if I structure my day perfectly, I constantly have tasks coming in. And because of this constant, or like it's called always on culture that we have. So basically you get tasks coming in constantly, and not only this, so basically if we were to talk face to face, you would give me a task, we would walk away from each other and I would forget about it, and then later on be like, oh, I have time now, what were the tasks that I wanted to do? But now with them all being online, it's on my screen right in front of me, and it's not going away until I finish the tasks. So it's taking away from my autonomy to structure my day myself, even though they say that ICT now gives you the opportunity to work super flexible, as you can work at the times you want, wherever you want, with whomever you want. That's not really the case. So the autonomy becomes decreased, in my opinion, due to ICT. What's your take on that? I mean, it's really going in accordance to what you said already, but maybe you have another 2 cents to add to that.
Yeah, no, I'll just repeat the rant I just did. No, I do agree. I've seen it in my family. My wife is since the pandemic, she's been working from home, which kind of gave her employer the feeling that she is now always available. As in, usually you'd come to the office and then your workday starts, and sometimes you'd get a call in the car or on your commute to work, and they'd be like, I'm sorry to bother you before workday starts, but I got a quick question, blah blah blah. Now she gets calls at like 10 in the evening because I was sitting at home, I was behind my laptop, I saw this question, I thought I'd give you a call. So they kind of assume now that, because you're so mobile and because we've got everything, that you are also always available. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, and kind of because I'm intrigued by psychology, looking at what it does to people, not just my wife, but to everyone who's in this situation, it's really hard to say no. Because how you now need like a hard stop from your workday. You actually still need to say, it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever. I need to sign off because I've had my productivity. I don't have any energy anymore. I'm mentally, I'm tired. It's done. But it's hard because they kind of expect you now to be on that like 24/7 kind of thing, which would be fine if they would do that and then leave you alone. So if you're like, okay, you send me any assignment you want, I'll take one to it in the morning, I'll wake up at 7 and do something, blah, blah. No, but you still need to be there between like 9 and 5. But then now we've added hours before and after, and we're just going to spam you with questions. And because you're always there, I'm super old because I'm going back to like my first job. It was like 2009 or something in the office. And surely we had internet. You said it's brand new, but we had like the first version of internet. But it wasn't really used other than email. So rather than us getting questions through the phone, we got them through email. So the workload didn't really change. It stayed the same. Now what we see is that people start using different platforms. So you get like an email with an urgent question, and then they send a WhatsApp message, because you also have WhatsApp right now. And then they start calling you, and they send you a chat in MS Teams. And so there's so much information coming left and right. People kind of like claim you and kind of feel that, like you said, you have everything with you, your laptop, your phone, etc. So you're always there, so I can always spam you. The fact that you have that stuff with you doesn't mean that you're available. But because we as people have such a sense of, belonging and I don't know the English word for that, but when you have the sense like I have to be there for my employer, right? I have that, I need to be there because they need me and I'm super important. And if I'm not there, then they're going to think something of me. So that's kind of hard to say no. So without you wanting it, you are available. And I think that takes away from the autonomy if you could say to your employer, like, look, these are my peak hours. This is when I'm most productive. This is when I'm available. I don't use my laptop between 3 and 5 because I'm walking my dog, because that's when I'm at my lowest, when it comes to energy, when it comes to being creative. Don't call me between 3 and 5. There's no need. But you can send me an email and I'll take it up between 7 and 9 in the evening. We don't have that autonomy because we're still stuck in it like third industrial revolution when it comes to work hours and culture. But then with all this technology, we do have that availability. And it kind of angers me. Maybe you can hear it in my voice that this is what I've been struggling with for years. They are demanding you to always be working and always be available. And they don't understand. And I think that's also from the documentary, the social, what was it called? It was a big Netflix thing, The Social Dilemma.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Because these things keep sending you nudges and because psychology, it triggers you. You do want to look at your notifications, even though you're off the clock. If your work phone goes off 4 times in a row, you're gonna look who's texting you. You're gonna read it, and you're gonna, start thinking about what they're saying. So you're always on, even in the middle of the night. So it kind of angers me that's the culture. But yeah, I think that's a huge problem. That always being available is such a huge problem.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And there was one other thing that you just brought up in what you said. It's basically how we're blurring the boundaries between private life and work life.
Yep.
And this also has, again, positive and negative effects. So there's people that really prefer the separation of work life and private life, but there's also people that kind of like the merge. And here, again, it comes to autonomy to be able to decide that for yourself. Do you want to merge it, or do you want to rather separate it? Because the nice thing about merging is that you're just more flexible. It's easier to basically do family life and do work life because you can write an email and then really quickly check on your kids in the other room. Like, that's nice, right? But on the other hand, it becomes difficult, as you say, to switch off. But when you look, for example, to people that segregate the two really strictly and say, okay, after 5 o'clock, I'm not looking at my phone anymore. For them, they might not be as flexible, but they have the time away to relax. However, they do experience a stronger contrast between the different roles they're basically playing in their life. So between like the father and or parent in general and the worker that they are. So here, because you, for example, mentioned that your wife works at home, it is actually really beneficial to have that physical transport from one area to the next, not only to basically travel and be not around your family and have the quietness in your office to work, but also for a psychological benefit to have the distance between the two roles that you're playing in your life. So I do see where you're coming from, definitely.
But technology is blurring that as well, because you know what happens if she does have an office day, then she drives back, she gets a phone call when she's in the car, she comes home calling that same colleague still, and then the colleague's like, oh, before we hang up, could you check this and that, and then she opens the laptop and starts working again. So that's because we have all this availability. Like when you look at the old ages, like the 80s and stuff, you didn't have that. So once you left the office at 8 or at 5 and you closed the door, no one could even contact you unless they called like your landline, which was, no one was going to do that. So you didn't have that risk. So you were free to close the door and leave. But now, because all this mobility that we have, it's hard because people keep stalking you. You're not going to ignore them. And again, speaking from personal experience, I'm not going to go into the details, but at some point I said, well, if you're going to treat me this way, you pay me until 5, I'm going to leave at 5. Because, we made a deal. You gave me a contract, you gave me a couple hours, you said 40 hours a week, I'm going to do 40 hours a week, right? The thing is that I wanted to have that segregation. I wanted to come in the office in the morning, then go home, eat, go to the gym, whatever, have my time, be me. But the thing is that I had the freedom to do so because they said, well, if you want to leave at 5, you're free to go. But keep in mind that you're not going to grow in this organization because your colleagues are still here at 7 because they work hard, right? They are here. Doesn't even matter if they are productive, to go back to that one, but they are visible. Because higher management is going to come in like, oh, wow, it's 7 at night. These guys are still here. Oh, they're so awesome. And I was gone. It's like my seat was empty. My laptop was gone. So once I got my evaluation meetings, like the yearly thing, they were like, well, you're a good worker, but you kind of stick to your hours. So that, it shows that you're not really want to grow in this organization. And, you're not really motivated or ambitious. We're not going to help you grow in this organization. But the one who produced shit work, but stayed here till 8, they're going to get a promotion because, they were here, everyone saw them, etc. So that's the culture that we also have, right? Because if you have that segregation, then you're a 9-to-5er and you're not going to go anywhere. You're not ambitious. And that's a cultural problem.
Yeah, it absolutely is a cultural problem, but that's also where the solution lies, in my opinion. So what you said in the beginning, that back in the old days, nobody would reach the landline because it's just not something you do.
Yeah.
Why don't we establish the same norms when it comes to portable technology? Like after 5 o'clock, it's just not something you do to reach out. And I think there it really is the task of upper management to set these organizational norms and say, hey, you can reach out in a case of emergency, but then send an email that they can check at their own time instead of calling them at 7 o'clock. So yes, it is a problem, but it really depends on the company culture that you have. And there lies the key, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a cultural thing. Because the reason that we have that technology, the fact that we can use it doesn't mean that we should. At least not all the time. Sure, I've got a mobile phone and a laptop, but it doesn't mean that you need to stalk me on there 24/7, right? You do know the boundaries. If your colleague is sick, you're not going to call them unless it's an emergency. So we already have that kind of established. Why don't we do that for normal working hours? Like, I know you kind of finish at 5. I'm not going to call you because it's not super urgent. No, we're going to call them because, well, they're probably in their car. They've got their mobile phone. I can give them a call. But that triggers more work and more questions and more, mental energy. So that needs to change, that culture, I think.
Absolutely agree. But also, especially when we talk about the integration of work life and private life, what you can also see is that there's spillover effects. So say, for example, you have a problem at work, you're very likely, especially if you integrate the two so tightly, that you bring that problem back home, which is a negative side effect. But you also have positive spillover. So it's not right to say like this integration in general is not a good thing because say, for example, you had a really successful day at work and everything went super well. You got a lot of positive feedback. You're going to come home and be super happy too, be motivated. So I think it's important to integrate the two whenever there's this positive effect, when you can benefit from what you're experiencing in your private life and bring that into your work life and the other way around. But it's also important to be able to separate the two in case of negative spillover. So when you experience a conflict in one situation or the other, to avoid bringing it over into your other life domain.
But how would you do that? Because say you get bad news at work in the morning, you're still going to bring that home some way.
Yes, you will, but it's say for example they reach out to you while you're already at home in after hours. Then you're probably going to bring it more into your private, like into your family house, because you basically have to call in maybe your home office, then walk back into the dining room, be like, oh man, I just got this call and this is the information that I received. However, if you get that at work and you got it, for example, in the morning, and then in the evening you had the day to process it, you went already on the train and had your time to think about it, maybe got distracted during the day, switched off during the ride home. You come home and you're like, oh, this morning this happened. But it's more as like it's less emotionally loaded then because you have the time to already deal with it in this other life domain and you're not bringing it directly into the private domain, so to say.
Yeah, it makes sense. I saw something on TikTok. It was someone who, I think it's also a psychologist, who said humans actually have like a winding down period, like transitioning in. That's the thing. It was like a transitioning window going from your like work character into your home character. There should be like an open space between those time frames to switch off your work and switch on your home life. So if you're calling your work during your commute home, you're definitely gonna bring the entire office with you, right? Because you're not going into that transition. Because I see you nodding, so I think I'm on the right track, right?
Yes, you are.
This is something I hated so much, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, that I used to make this joke with my wife. I said, the funny thing is that we were both working at our dinner table because we didn't have this small little home office yet. So we were sitting across from each other, like say on the right chairs. And then we close our laptops and then move to the left chairs because now we were at home having dinner, right? The space in between was like 20 centimeters. So I said, this is supposed to be like our separation line between work life and home life. If you work the entire day in your living room, you're not going to be able to relax at night in your living room because you're basically sitting in your office, right? It would be kind of like watching Netflix in like a big corporate organization, just sitting at your desk watching Netflix. It's not going to work because there's not even spillover. It's just 100% of your work is now at home. And I think that I'm not going to go into the details, but I think that is one of the biggest mental issues that we had, especially during the pandemic, is that people no longer had like work-life balance. It was just like work balance, as in working 24/7. Because even if you're not on the clock and you're not on your laptop, you're still in your office. If you go to bed, you're only a couple of feet away from your laptop and your work. So I really understand what you mean if you say that spillover can have a very negative impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you say there needs to be this sort of transition, there's a really funny example in the university in Eindhoven. When you leave the library, there's a really weird stairs going out of the library. Because it's the steps are just too long to take one step, but they're not short enough, or sorry, not long enough to take two steps. So you really have to think about where you put your feet. And in the beginning, everyone was like, oh, this is so annoying. But there's a thought behind it, because you, in this moment, switch off from what you were doing and you focus on your movements and where you're stepping. That's already causing you to switch off and sort of forget about what you were doing beforehand. And just to have this staircase, it gives you this sort of concentrated transition to leave one work area and go outside into your private life. So it's really important to have this also spatial separation.
That's a good trick. Yeah, I like that one. I'm going to try it over here. Just
run up and down the stairs now.
Exactly, yeah, but very consciously. But yeah, the thing is that I can get cranky if I get home too quickly. Because I'm still often we go for a walk outside if the weather's nice enough. It's not often. But then I'm like, sometimes I'm not really talkative. And I just tell my wife, like, I'm still in work mode. I kind of still feel like I need to be focused or something, or shit's going on. I'm still kind of in my work mode. So I'm not being cheerful. That's because I haven't gone through that transition yet. And once I saw that TikTok, I'm like, this makes so much sense, that people just need to wind down and need to transition, because work is a serious thing, right? You're a character at work. You're not a different person, but you're in a different role, like you said in the beginning, like that's your work role. So that really triggered my sense of we need to understand that this is a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically, to sum up of what we just discussed is to avoid this role conflict. It's better to separate the two, but to be able to access this newly won flexibility that we have through ICT technology, or IC technology, not ICT technology, it's a bit double. But to leverage this flexibility, we need to be able to integrate the two. In this, just there's a big clash, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I see that we're reaching the hour mark, by the way. I could go on for hours talking to you. I think we should do a part 2, going in more of the psychology. But before we leave this conversation, I want to ask you, is there one final thought that you want to share with us, with me, or one thing you would like to add to the whole rant that we just had?
Maybe not a particular thing that I would like to add, but just a message that I would really like, especially to reach upper management, is provide your employees with the flexibility to choose their level of separation and integration themselves, just to allow work balance to happen, and most importantly, to allow this connectivity and autonomy issue that we're facing to sort of dissolve a little bit. And that's mainly up to the cultural norms that we establish when it comes to ICT and of how much we expect of our employees and when we need to reach them.
Okay, those are some very powerful last words. Well, not your last words, but for this episode.
No, don't say that yet.
I'm sorry, I'm not threatening you, but I'm definitely going to clip that because that's a very important message. We need to go through this change. All this technology is helping us so much, but we do need to change the entire culture of the human side as well.
Absolutely agree.
Awesome. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here today, Clara. Would you mind if I would invite you for a second part and we go into the psychology a bit more?
Yes, sure. I would love that. I'm always up for ranting about psychology, so count me in.
Awesome. Then we're gonna go for a physical meeting because we talked about connectivity, so we're gonna make that happen. Clara, thank you so much for joining me today. And for you out there listening, thank you. Stay tuned and stay human.